We are still in the first round of the NBA playoffs, but the Kings' offseason has been in full swing really since the second they got eliminated from the postseason. There's been a lot of shuffling in the front office, on the coaching staff, and I'm sure that means there's even a lot more shuffling to come on the player front. So that's really what I am here to preview. The Kings brought in Scott Perry, Monty McNair, and Wes Wilcox out of the front office. Scott Perry in. A lot of the other guys in the front office I think have been retained, but the big thing is the two main guys are out in Monty McNair and Wes Wilcox. Scott Perry in, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do. Doug Christie retained as the head coach, and Jay Triano gone from the coaching staff, so the offense will probably look different next season. And I can't say that that's a bad thing. It didn't look great towards the end of last season. Maybe not Jay's fault, but there were also rumors of Domantas Sabonis not being super happy with the offense. Other guys have not been happy with the offense at times. So Jay Triano's gone, a few other assistants gone. Leandro Barbosa, the only assistant staying on, I believe. So the Kings have to fill out the coaching staff, and then they will look to fill out the roster. And so in this offseason preview, first I'll go through what the team needs. What are the holes that the Kings need to fill? What is going to make them a playoff team next season? Then I will go through the tools that they have at their disposal to be able to fill those holes. Then I'll look at the Kings players and their contract situations. Who's a free agent? Who maybe could look to get an extension. Then we'll look at some possible free agent / trade targets. And then I'll give you my dream 10-man rotation, I guess. Is it a super realistic 10-man? I don't know. That's for you to decide. Is it even that good? I don't know. That's for you to decide. But I just loved doing the hypotheticals. And so I've assembled what I think is a pretty fun rotation. And so we'll see what you guys think of that. But first, we do have to make the assumption that the Kings are still trying to win now. And that has been the rumor. Scott Perry has come in, and I believe his job is to win now. Because the team could pick the rebuild approach, but I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that that's what Vivek wants to do. I don't think that's what this team and organization wants to do. They don't want to go into a rebuild, right? And the Kings roster situation might still be salvageable. I don't necessarily think the ceiling is ever going to be super high, but it's still salvageable to the point of being a playoff team. And so last season, the Kings kind of went with the approach of star hunting, getting DeMar DeRozan, trying to fill a scoring gap, but not really filling their defensive gap. And so Scott Perry has come in and he's talked a ton about identity. And to me, that is the word of the offseason for the Kings. Identity. Purpose, connectivity. I want a front office, a coaching staff, and a roster that all look and think alike. Scott Perry is preaching defense and togetherness and unselfishness. That's also the things that Doug Christie preaches. Now they need to get a roster that aligns with that identity. And right now, they really don't have that. When you look at the Kings roster, you have the top four on the team, and it's Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, Malik Monk, and DeMar DeRozan. Those are your top four paid players. That's a lot of redundancy. That's a lot of offense. That's not a lot of defense. That's not a lot of two-way capability. It's not a lot of guys that complement each other. So it's a lot of the money that you have tied up in like players. And so that's really the big thing that I think Scott Perry needs to sort out is I don't think those players can fit together. Maybe three of them can fit together, but definitely not four. If one of them comes off the bench, if Malik Monk is coming off the bench, then I think maybe you can have Sabonis, LaVine, and then Monk off the bench. Or you can, put together whatever combination of maybe 2 out of 4 of those players, they can work together. But I don't think you can have all 4 on the roster at the same time. So I think you're going to have to look to trade somebody. And, there have been rumors about, does Sabonis want to be here? Does DeMar want to be here? I'm kind of ignoring those just because that's not something that I can know for sure. That's not something I can control, obviously. And so I'm just kind of ignoring that when I'm trying to build this team. I think what we've seen in the playoffs is it's not a strong link sport anymore. That's kind of been the big talk. It's a weak link sport. So instead of whoever has the best player wins the series, it's whoever doesn't have the worst player that plays, right? It's the team that has the depth. It's the team that can play in many different ways. right? It's the team that has the different looks that they can throw out there. You look at the Rockets, they have that double big look, and now that's the look that's dominating the Warriors. You have the Timberwolves, who have different bench players that they can throw out there, and the Lakers just don't, right? The Lakers have LeBron and Luka. They have the strong links. So the Timberwolves beat the Lakers because they have the depth. They have the team that fits together, not necessarily because they have the best player, although Ant was incredible. You look at the Bucks losing to the Pacers. Giannis is the best player, no doubt about that. That was not even close, but the Pacers are just the better team. And so that's what the Kings need to look to do. They need to look to, really, I think, pick two of your top four, and it's probably going to be Sabonis and LaVine, right? Two of your top four, and build around those guys. Get players that make sense, and that's why I think DeMar and Monk, I think it's most beneficial to probably trade those guys. I'm sure Monk has trade value. I don't know about DeMar. I'm sure he has a little bit of trade value. Like, someone is going to want him, a guy that can just put up 20 points per game. He's getting older, of course. His contract isn't too bad, though. And so, could the Kings look to go and make a big move for another star player? They could, and I wouldn't be totally against that. Could they go in for like a Zion, a Ja Morant, a Trae Young, a LaMelo Ball? Sure, they could, and I would be fine with that. But no matter what, if you trade for a star, if you keep LaVine and Sabonis as your stars, no matter what the Kings need to do is pick your guys, right? Pick two guys to be your top guys offensively. Those are your two stars that you're building around, and then establish an identity, establish that defensive identity, try to get guys that then fit around them, right? That are two-way guys, and create a more versatile team than what we have right now. And so when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at Sabonis, LaVine, Keegan. Those are kind of your locked-in starters. Keon could also be a starter depending on how things go. But the reason I'm not locking Keon Ellis in as a starter is because one of the big needs for this team is a point guard. The Kings don't have a point guard. They have a bunch of shooting guards. And they have some shooting guards that can play a little point guard, like a Malik Monk or DeMar DeRozan. But again, I think you're going to look to probably trade those guys, in my world at least. So you want a point guard. And so then you would have a point guard plus LaVine, plus Keegan, plus Sabonis. I would love then more size on the wing, starting alongside those guys. So I would love a point guard, a sizable wing that can play both ways, and then one more solid guy who's a wing or a big that can play alongside Sabonis would be great, because we've seen a lot of double bigs. So I think those are really the three places that the Kings need to look at: a point guard, a two-way wing defender, and then maybe a big that can play alongside Sabonis. And so let's look at the books for the Kings. This is the 24-25 season, as you can see. So this is going to be next season. And as you can see, Zach LaVine making $47.5 million, Sabonis $43.5 million, DeMar $24.75, Malik almost $19 million. Like I said, so much money into those top offensive guys, which I just don't think is the way. So I think when you look at the trade pieces that this team has, you have Monk and DeRozan as the trade pieces, and then maybe you have like a Devin Carter if the right deal comes along, or Valanciunas' $10 million, again, if the right deal comes along. So let's look at the tools that the Kings are going to have to fill the needs on their roster. This is the 2024 season, so this isn't next season, but it's going to be the same, where they're going to have this non-taxpayer mid-level. Last season, it was $12.8 million. This next season, it's going to be between 14 and 15 million, I believe. So that's the money that the Kings are going to really have to spend in free agency, or they could keep it and then use it as a trade exception. So they could trade for a player and then their money goes into that exception. And then they also have a bunch of other trade exceptions, which you can see here. The big one is the Kevin Huerter one, which expires next February. $16.8 million. So as you can see, they have the $16.8 million trade exception for Huerter. They have the mid-level exception. Those are the two main tools that they can add salary to this team with. But then we have to consider how much the Kings actually want to spend. And so here we can look at the luxury tax and how much tax space the Kings have, because the Kings are a team that just doesn't want to spend into the luxury tax. So that is the cap pretty much for the Kings. When we're looking at it, the cap is the luxury tax. The Kings are not going over the luxury tax. So looking at this, we have 10 players for next season. Terrence Davis counts as one of them. That's non-guaranteed. I see them probably waiving him. So then it would be 9 players. And so this has about 20 million in tax space. So that's the number we can work with, about 20 million to spend. And you can spend that either by trading into that trade exception of the 16.8 million or one of the other trade exceptions, or getting a free agent with that mid-level exception, about 14.5 million or below. And so let's go back to looking at the Kings roster here. What are the big question marks of the guys who are already, or who are on the Kings last season? Keon Ellis is an interesting one because he's on a team option here. $2.3 million for next season. Massive steal, right? That would be great. That gives you more flexibility to add to this team. But you really have to consider the future here. We can't just look at next season. So if you pick up that option, he becomes an unrestricted free agent the next offseason. He can test the market. If he plays well, which I assume he will, and he's probably only going to improve, and he's just such an important player, he can get into the market, and you never know what could happen. And so I would love if the Kings locked him up long term this offseason. You could decline that team option and extend him long term. And so, of course, that would eat into the money that you could use this offseason to add to the team. But I just think it's super important to keep Keon Ellis here long term, a young player who fits the identity so well, is a two-way player, is a winning player. This is a guy who is not going to get played off the court in playoff games, right? He just is such a good two-way player. So the Kings need to keep him around. So I would love if they could work out a long-term deal with him. Then we look at Keegan Murray here. He has one more year in his deal. He is extension eligible this offseason. He had to take a step back last season because of DeMar. So what I would love to see is going into this next season, again, the Kings trade DeMar, trade Malik, and give Keegan more opportunity offensively. But he started the season shooting so poorly, but he was so good defensively. But just because of the offense, maybe the number that he's looking at to get extended with isn't as high as maybe it would have been, right? So maybe extending him now is a good idea. Somewhere between $25 and $30 million is the number that I've heard. And to me, that's an amazing deal. I mean, I would easily give him $30 million. If it's $25 million, that would be an incredible deal for the Kings. I would easily give him $30 million a year. Because again, he's a young player who fits the identity, who can play both ways, and who has a lot of potential. Then you have the free agents going into next season, the two most important being LaRavia and Lyles. I'm not too worried about Doug McDermott or Jay Crowder. No offense. Sorry, guys. So Jake LaRavia is in an interesting spot because Memphis declined his team option before he got traded. He can only get paid, I think, like $5.1 million, which is actually one of the reasons I think that Memphis did trade him. So $5.1 million. I could see that being around what his value is right now, maybe a little low. I don't see another team being out there being like, we want to pay him way more money. Like, I don't see that happening, but it's still, it's nerve wracking. But I hope what the Kings are able to do is give him that $5 million, maybe do something with an option, a player option, that then he can prove himself this next season and then get a bigger deal after that. Because Jake LaRavia, just like Keon Ellis, just like Keegan Murray, that's a guy that needs to stick around. He plays both ways. He plays so hard. He has the size as a wing defensively. He can shoot the ball. We've seen some interesting things offensively off the dribble. It's scary sometimes, but he's shown some flashes there. So he's another two-way guy that the Kings need to keep around. And then you have Trey Lyles. And Trey Lyles is more of a question mark to me about whether I want to keep him around or not. He's been great for the Kings. Last season, he was asked to play the backup 5, backup 4, did it valiantly, is a great hustle player, takes charges, is a good team defender for sure, offensive rebounds. I'm just looking at how much money the Kings have, right? And I'm looking at if Jake LaRavia gets brought back for that $5 million, if Keon Ellis maybe gets a bigger deal. All of a sudden, that's cutting into that $20 million that the Kings have to spend. And again, that number could change, especially if you're going to trade DeRozan and Monk. Things can shift, but all of a sudden, maybe you don't have that much money left. I don't know if you really want to spend it on Trey Lyles when you need a point guard, when you need more athleticism. So I definitely don't want to pay Trey Lyles $8 million like he was making last season. Not because he's a bad player at all, but just because I don't know that that's really what the team needs. If he gets brought back on a smaller deal, I could be happy. If the Kings strike out on other guys, then you could definitely bring him back. If Jake LaRavia leaves, then, maybe you bring him back in that case. But that one's definitely more of a question mark to me. So now we can get more into the moves that the Kings can make for players outside of the Kings roster from last season. So first, I kind of want to look at some trades or some possible trade partners for the Kings when you're looking for a team to trade with. You're looking for the teams at the top who maybe are getting a little too expensive, who want to shed some salary. You're looking at the teams on the bottom who maybe want to get off some veteran players. And then you're just looking for teams with redundancy at one position. So the Kings are a team that other teams are probably looking at and saying, wow, they have a lot of redundancy at that shooting guard position of scorers. And so, I look at the Magic and I say, they don't have offense. And I look at the Kings and I say, they don't have defense. Come on. That's going to come together, right? That seems like a good pairing there. The Kings and the Magic, it just feels like something's going to happen. It's tough, though. The Magic have a guy like Jonathan Isaac, who has his injury problems, but is just an amazing defender, not giving you much offensively, can't shoot the three unless he's playing against the Kings. I don't know, so maybe it'll work if he's on the Kings. But he's interesting. They have like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who underperformed and is on a big contract, but great 3-and-D player. I don't know, Gary Harris is a solid player. And I think one of the common themes for guys that I'm looking at, it's buy low guys. It's guys who aren't perfect, who maybe, have bigger contracts than they should, because so do guys on the Kings. So they need to swap those. Guys with injury histories, guys who just didn't play that well last season. The Kings are not in a great spot in terms of assets. So you can't really be picky. The Magic seem like a perfect team for Zach LaVine if you're looking to trade him, because with Zach LaVine, he's got one more year on his deal and then a player option. And so any team trading for him, that's not that bad. If a team can trade for him and then he declines the option and they extend him longer term, if they could work something out like that, I feel like that would actually be perfect for the Magic. And so then if you're the Kings, do you want Jonathan Isaac and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope? Obviously that doesn't sound all that great, but it's that defense. It's the 3-and-D of KCP. I think it would be interesting, but if you're looking to trade Zach LaVine, Orlando really seems like the place. And any of these can be, 3-team trades. But then looking at some other teams that are really looking to make deals. There are a lot of stars on the trade market. Giannis, maybe Zion or Ja, Kevin Durant. There could be other guys as well. The Kings maybe won't trade for one of those guys, but they could absolutely get in on these deals as a third team. When you're a third team in a deal, you can really benefit from that. So I could see that being interesting for the Kings to try to sneak into one of these deals and sneak a player to make salaries work. So I'm looking at Boston, who is just becoming so expensive. They don't want to be a second apron team. They got to offload some of their contracts. Here, I'll show you guys their books. Looking at this, so expensive. Jaylen Brown's massive deal. Jason Tatum's massive deal. Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Derek White, so expensive. And so I'm looking at Drew Holiday, do they want Drew Holiday? Especially when you got Peyton Pritchard on this steal of a deal. Drew Holiday's getting older. Drew Holiday's on a big deal. The Kings need a point guard. And it would be nice if that point guard could defend. There aren't a lot of point guards that can defend. So Drew Holiday could be one of them. Now, do I want this deal? Not really. But you can't be picky. But again, more likely it'd be nice if the Kings could get in as a third team on this type of deal. Another team like that could be Houston. Houston could be trying to make a big deal to go get a star. And what if the Kings could sneak out with Jabari Smith Jr. somehow? Probably not. More likely, what if they could sneak out with an Aaron Holiday? So instead of Drew Holiday, you get Aaron Holiday. Aaron Holiday's a solid guard on a cheap deal. I'm just looking at teams where the Kings could somehow get into a deal and get a good player out of it. Like Phoenix could be looking to offload Kevin Durant. And so I'm looking at Royce O'Neal. I'm looking at Nick Richards. I'm looking at one of their free agent point guards. The Bulls are always a team that the Kings could work with. Lonzo Ball is, again, like a point guard that can defend. There aren't many of those who can also shoot threes. The injuries are a worry Is he ever going to get back to prime Lonzo? Probably not. So, but again, you can't be picky. Prime Lonzo would be the perfect fit on this team, but he's not in his prime. Is that a chance you're willing to take on a guy making $10 million? They just have a lot of guards. Like Trey Jones is a free agent for them. They have Javon Carter, Ayo Dosunmu. And then you're looking at a team like Portland, who has expiring vets like Rob Williams or Matisse Thybulle that could be interesting. And so I think this offseason could be one of a lot of movement. There seems like there might be stars available. It seems like there might be teams trying to shed some salary, and maybe the Kings could get in on that, trading, again, Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan. I just think there's a lot of opportunity for trades that the Kings could get involved in this offseason. But I got a list. I got a list of just guys that could be available. Not all of them are realistic. Not all of them are good. But I just got a long list of guys that could be available. So I'm gonna read them out to you. The point guards that could be available. Ty Jerome. I mean, he's a great player, and Cleveland just has a lot of money tied up in their guys. So can they pay him? Could the Kings somehow get Ty Jerome as their starting point guard? I don't know. That could be interesting. Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, Delano Banton, Jordan McLaughlin. So again, like these, Jordan McLaughlin coming back, these vary from very good players like Ty Jerome to Delano Banton. Bruce Brown, Dante Exum, Spencer Dinwiddie, Dennis Schroeder, Trey Jones, Cam Payne, DeLon Wright, Malcolm Brogdon. And then there are some guys who could be available for trade like Alonzo Ball or a Drew Holiday, an Ayo Dosunmu, and Aaron Holiday. So the Kings need a point guard. They need to get one of those guys. Then you're looking at wings. And so this could be someone coming off the bench, or it could be someone in the starting lineup. We'll look at the free agents first. Amir Coffey, Gary Payton II, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Lamar Stevens, Luke Kennard. That's, not really one that fits. But Jayshawn Tate, Taurean Prince, Gary Trent Jr. Again, not all of them really fit the Kings. I just went through every team and wrote down the names. There are some interesting trade targets, though, at the wing position. I feel like if you want a good wing, you're going to have to trade for it, and it's not going to be free agency. The point guard may be more free agency. The wing, I feel like more is going to be through trade, and that's why keeping Jake LaRavia is so important here. Jonathan Kuminga is an interesting one. He's just a super high upside guy, but a super high risk as well. He's probably going to be traded from the Warriors. So do the Kings take a chance on Jonathan Kuminga? Kuminga is just such an interesting player because he has potential, and if he just committed to defending, rebounding, running the floor, cutting, he could be a solid player in that way, even though he can't shoot all that well. But he's just more one of those players that is the star player when he's out there, but he's not a star player. He plays like a star, but he's not. Could a Michael Porter Jr. be available? I don't know. Probably not. Royce O'Neal is a trade target. KJ Martin, Matisse Thybulle. I mentioned some of these. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Isaac Okoro. Again, the Cavaliers are expensive. Could you get Okoro out of there somehow? I don't know. And then Andrew Wiggins. When it comes to the big men free agents, we have Kevon Looney, Steven Adams, Brooke Lopez, Jericho Sims, Thomas Bryant, Paul Reed, Chris Boucher, Gershon Yabusele, Precious Achiuwa, Day'Ron Sharpe, Clint Capella, Larry Nance Jr. Trade targets, Rob Williams, Jonathan Isaac, Goga Bitadze. So those are a lot of names, right? And with the Kings' salary situation, especially if they do work out a longer term deal with Keon or keep Jake LaRavia and Trey Lyles, they don't have a lot of money to play with in free agency. So they can get, a couple of the low end guys or one of the more high end free agents. And when I say high end, not actually high end. And so I think really the Kings can go out there and get one solid free agent, fill out minimums, and then it's going to be about the trades. So I have my dream 10-man rotation for next season. Is it realistic? I mean, probably not. And is it even that good? I think it has potential. I'll just say that. But for me, I've just created what I think is a fun 10-man rotation that is somewhat realistic for this offseason. So first off, I have the Kings keeping Sabonis, LaVine, extending Keegan, hopefully getting Keon on a long-term deal, keeping Devin Carter, keeping Jonas Valanciunas, re-signing Jake LaRavia. That's first off. So then that leaves 3 spots because in my world, you're trading DeMar, you're trading Monk. Leaves 3 spots, a point guard, a wing, or kind of 2 wings, and a big. So my point guard, I have as Tyus Jones. I think Tyus Jones is a really solid player. Is he a guy who's going to bring in defense? No. He's a guy who's going to be able to run the offense. 10 points per game, 5 assists per game. Great assist to turnover ratio guy, shot 41.4% from three, was in just a mess of a Phoenix Suns team. So could that be the same exact case if he came to the Kings? Absolutely. But he's a guy who I think you can get in free agency for the right price. And is just a super steady player. And so you have that steady player to run the offense. Now you need the athlete, right? You need the athlete who gives you some size on the wing, who can defend. So I got the Kings trading for Andrew Wiggins. Is this a little bit of bias because I'm a Kansas Jayhawks fan and he was a Jayhawk? Maybe a little bit. But imagine replacing DeMar DeRozan in the starting lineup with Andrew Wiggins. The athleticism difference is massive. And so that alone would help the Kings defense. Averaged 18 per game last season, 37.4% from three. He can be that 3-4 alongside of Keegan. And so you would have a starting lineup of Tyus Jones, Zach LaVine, Keegan Murray, Andrew Wiggins, and Domantas Sabonis. It's not the best defensive lineup of all time, but I think it can be solid enough and the offense is still going to be good. And so you'd be trading DeMar, you'd be trading Monk. So there's a little more money to go around there. So then I have Jonathan Isaac, a guy who's struggled with health, but played 71 games last season, shot 25.8% from three. That's the downside. But the Kings, I've just wanted a pure defender on the Kings because we've seen so much offense. So this is my world. So I can do what I want. And I can bring in a guy that doesn't play offense. I can bring in a 6'10 elite defender who can take that pressure off Keegan. I've talked about this, how we need someone who can take the pressure off Keegan defensively. Jonathan Isaac can do that. So I have the Kings bringing in Tyus Jones, Andrew Wiggins, and Jonathan Isaac. And we'll just look at the contracts real quick. Jonathan Isaac, $15 million, 4 years. And then Andrew Wiggins is $28 million, then $30 million player option, just so you guys know the contracts there. So there it is. That's my dream 10-man rotation. Tyus Jones, Zach LaVine, Keegan Murray, Andrew Wiggins, Domantas Sabonis. Off the bench, you don't exactly have a point guard. That's okay. We don't have a single point guard now. I'm not being greedy. I'm only adding one point guard. So we have Devin Carter, Keon Ellis, Jake LaRavia, Jonathan Isaac, Jonas Valanciunas. You kind of got a more offensive starting lineup and a more defensive second unit, which again is what the Kings already have, but it's a little more balanced. And, you know, when you have Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine, it's just going to be hard to really build a great defensive starting lineup, especially when you need a point guard. And like I said, there aren't many great defensive point guards that can also shoot the three, that can facilitate an offense, that are available. So that's just not something that is likely going to happen. And if you need some more defense, get someone from that bench. Get Keon Ellis in there for Tyus Jones. You know, if you don't need a point guard in a situation, you got the dogs on the bench. I think that would be fun. And, you know, I've talked about the identity of this team being a defensive identity because this team really needs defense, but also just an up-tempo style of basketball is something that suits Sabonis, something that suits LaVine. And so I think that this group of guys, like really outside of Valanciunas, really could thrive in a fast-paced transition style team. You know, look, it's actually impossible to actually know what the Kings are going to do this offseason because I feel like it could range from just completely blowing up that top four. Domantas Sabonis could request a trade. DeMar DeRozan could request a trade. And now you're building around Zach LaVine or something like that, to keeping all four of those guys at the top, which I just really hope that that doesn't happen because I just don't see how you can build just a really competitive team around those four guys when none of them can play defense. Maybe Scott Perry will prove me wrong, but I think I'd be very disappointed if all four of those guys were still on the team. Not because I dislike any of those guys. Like, I have a Malik Monk jersey, and all I've been talking about is trading Malik Monk. So I'd have to get another jersey of someone who's on the team. I have a Sabonis jersey, but that would be sad to see Malik Monk go. But again, the Kings need to balance things out. They really need to lean into the identity that Scott Perry and Doug Christie have talked about. So I'm excited for this offseason. I'm excited to see what young players can grow a little bit because the Kings don't have a first round pick. You know, you'll see that the draft was not talked about at all because the Kings just don't have a first. But we've seen the Kings be able to get some undrafted guys. So, you know, We'll see. I'm excited to see the development of Devin Carter, him coming in, getting a summer league. Isaac Jones, Isaiah Crawford. Those are guys, I didn't really talk about, but one of those guys, or all of those guys, or some of those guys, developing into rotational pieces is super important, especially, of course, Devin Carter. But if Isaac Jones could also be a guy that could be playable, that could be huge, because it allows the Kings to have a guy on a small contract that's contributing, allows them to spend money elsewhere. So that could be huge. But I just want to see the Kings make moves. I want to see Scott Perry be very active this offseason, whether that means going and getting a different star, whether that means completely blowing it up, or whether that just means, retooling around Domantas Sabonis and Zach LaVine. This team needs to make big moves. So that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. Let me know who you want the Kings to target, who you want the Kings to sign, trade for, what you want the Kings to do this offseason. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.